Welcome to another garden Q&A with yours truly, Frankie Flowers, aka Frank Fairgene. That's my real name. Hey, if you're wondering, you're here for the first time, you're like, who the heck is this guy? I am a four-time best-selling garden author. I am a person who has been involved in the horticultural industry for a lifetime. My family owns and operates two garden centers called Bradford Greenhouse's Garden Gallery, located in Bradford and in Barrie. As well, greenhouse growers. We farmed. I can be seen Monday through Friday on breakfast television where I'm wild about weather. I give you your forecast. I'm passionate about plants. I'm always trying to give you some advice there as well. And really, it's my goal to motivate people to get out there and to grow, to help, to learn. And I'm always here to learn as well. And it's so great to always have people here each and every morning. And this is not each and every morning, but each and every Sunday, I jump on here for a half an hour. And with that, on that half an hour, we do some questions. I answer some questions. I give you some advice. I share some tips, some tricks, but as well as the garden community that's on here will get on the questions that I don't answer. And at that time, we'll put it in there a little bit of advice and also help you out. The goal is to make gardening easier for you and also just to make you feel a part of a community where we've all killed the plant before. Yes, indeed. We all have. Let's give some shout outs this morning because we got people jumping on right away. A good shout out to David this morning. Good morning to you out there as well. We have a good morning this morning to Fred. Good morning to you. We got a big shout out this morning from somebody very close to me in the Holland Marsh. That's T-Bone Camaro. Hey, buddy. We got as well a good morning out there from Kathy Wood from Hamilton Mountain. We have a good morning this morning from Suzanne. Good morning, Frank. I did a lot of plant shopping at your family garden center. I saw the pictures that you were there. The store looking good. We got lots of stuff growing on. I just finished off dropping my son to our Bradford location because he's working there today. My good friend Andrea, good morning to you as well from Newmarket. Ashley, who I visited up there at Crank and Sprocket. You weren't there, but shout out to your husband, Tristan, as well. Good morning to you. Love seeing the daffodils blooming as well. I do too. So let me just kind of share a little bit about what's going on, what I did just this last week, because it's kind of interesting to hear about other people's garden tasks, because it will remind you about what you should be doing. Last week, of course, I got out there, I fertilized my grass. The reason being is I saw that we had some rain working its way through, which was on Saturday, as well as I started to see things actively growing outdoors. My lawn now, it's amazing how quickly it became green. If you follow the newsletter, you'll know that I did use the Green Max, which is the Scott's Turf Builder Green Max. Green's up, it's got iron, it's got high nitrogen, a perfect spring formulated fertilizer for you that's out there. I also went out there, I had a couple patches in my backyard. I had a friend with a female dog that came by, and with that, there was a couple burn patches. I raked those areas up. I put down a little bit of the Easy Seed dog patch to kind of fix those little areas, even though it's a little bit cool still for the germination of grass seed. I put some of that down and I'll probably overseed again a little bit later in the month. I planted. Yeah, I needed some color. I was like, I need color. So in the front containers, I planted a combination of pansies, violas, and osteospermum. Those guys there can all handle the frost. And because of that, I have purple. And the reason why I'm going with purple is that's the color of the year for communities in bloom. So I put a little punch of purple out there. My mom needed some help in her own garden. You'll see this coming up as well on my social media. I divided some of the ornamental grasses she had. She wanted to spread some of those out. As well, she had two herbaceous tree peonies that were planted in a back garden that weren't really getting the affection and maybe admiration they should be getting. She had some trees removed in the front of the house, so now she has more sun. So it's just the perfect time to do that transplanting, especially with the peonies. The peonies are just kind of popping out of the ground, so you can see the size of them. You can lift that root ball without trying to disturb the roots, move them to a new place. When you're planting a peony, you never want to plant it too deep because if you do, it won't rebloom. So even when you're planting a little bit above the soil line, that existing. So when it settles, it won't settle below, so it won't be too deep. I used a quick start fertilizer to reduce the transplant shock, but now is a great time. Even if you want to divide some hostas, it's perfect. We're cool. This is a beautiful day to be out there, do some dividing and some transplanting of some of the perennials. And I'm excited. That's the key. I'm super excited. So let's give some other shout outs this morning as well. We got Crystal Allen. Good morning. What lawn fertilizer is recommended? Okay, so huge amount of fertilizers that are out there. Let's just break it down what you're looking for. For a spring fertilizer, if you had a crabgrass issue, you're getting a little bit late, but you could still apply a weed and feed. And mostly when you're seeing a weed and feed or a weed preventer at this time of the year, it'll have corn gluten. The corn gluten will coat seeds of existing weeds that are sitting there dormant on the lawn right now. Those are annual weeds like crabgrass. So it'll coat the seeds, it'll actually prevent it from germinating. And with that, your lawn will be able to grow and shade out any additional weed seeds. However, if you put a weed and feed down, like a Scott's weed and feed or a weed and preventer, then you cannot overseed your lawn for at least 6 weeks. What you're looking for an early spring formulation fertilizer, I use the Green Max. And the reason why I use that is it has a high first number, so high nitrogen. It's a slow release fertilizer, so it's going to release gradually, feed your lawn, and not release into the water table, causing any additional issues. It's actually going to do good, not harm. And as well, because it's a Green Max, it has iron, and that iron will actually help that greening of the lawn quicker. But you're usually looking for something with a high first number. Make sure it's a slow release. The key about a slow release fertilizer is it's not going to burn your lawn. Another tip, when you're filling your fertilizer spreader to do that feeding of your lawn, make sure you fill your spreader on your driveway or on your patio, not on the lawn, because if you have any overage, like some spills, it's not going to burn the lawn. And always look to your bag to see what setting you should put your broadcast spreader on to go out there and fertilize that's out there. So those are some tips for you there. My friend Matthew Amos is saying good morning and hey, Frank. Hey, Matthew, how's it going? Still going to continue to drink some coffee this morning. We got a shout out from Windsor, Ontario, where you guys are warming quite nicely. Michelle, you saw record-breaking temperatures as well last week, temperatures in the teens, even in the 20s on Friday. So right now it's amazing. Right now we have magnolias flowering at the same time as forsythia, flowering at the same time as cherry blossoms, flowering at the same time as peach trees. Everything's flowering at the same time, which is awesome in terms of visual color, but it's kind of speeding up our spring. And the other thing is I'm just concerned if we dip a little bit too cool, but the temperature's been pretty good overall. We got a good morning from Orangeville. The other concern I'm having is, we did have a fairly mild winter. Our winter was, we didn't really get snow until March, but before that, we saw really warm temperatures overall. And where we normally would see a lot more extreme colder temperatures for longer periods of time, what that does is actually kills disease and kills some insect population. This year, we could have a greater amount of disease and insects. So we're really going to need to inspect our gardens that much earlier that's out there. We have a shout out this morning from beautiful Gravenhurst. And indeed, Gravenhurst is beautiful. We have a good shout out this morning from chilly Brampton this morning. Frederick, Freddie, it's not that chilly outdoors. It's a beautiful spring morning out there. Marlene saying good morning this morning as well. We have Cynthia from Nova Scotia saying good morning out there, the beautiful island of Nova Scotia. And not too far from just where our Barrie location is, my Barrie family store, is Lyle. And good morning to Lyle out there. Here's another question that we have this morning. When can I trim tree branches? Some close to my roof. Thank you for any advice. So Jackie, the best and most ideal time to be pruning any overhead branches of deciduous trees, and that means trees that lose their leaves, is more so in winter. And that's really the ideal time because they're in dormancy. The one trees that we want to avoid at this time of year really doing any heavy pruning on are maples. Because if we were to prune a maple at this time of the year, that maple would bleed out and actually cause it some stress. Smaller branches, you can do that. But if the branches themselves are really coming towards your roof and posing a threat, it's more important to prune those. And I would prune those now, even though they could harm some of the trees a little bit. But if one of those trees is a maple, just avoid that. But the real ideal time is in dormancy, or when they're going to be going into dormancy, or even into fall next season. Jen, we have a good morning from Ottawa this morning, the nation's capital. We face north, so a lot of the times the morning sun is what you're receiving. The sun hits our front porch around 1:30, so you're actually not getting your sun until after it comes over the house. Do you think a Boston fern could survive in pots in the front, or will they burn? Thank you. Boston ferns won't burn in the front of the house, but what I would probably recommend above and beyond a Boston fern, giving you the same look of a Boston fern, is a Kimberly queen fern. Kimberly queen ferns are just that extra little bit hardier. still giving you a wonderful look, but they're not as finicky as what a Boston fern would be. So look for the Kimberly queen ferns, which are quite nice, and they're a better selection for you that's out there. I've had greater success with those. Nancy Fleming, shout out to you this morning. Huguette, I guess it is. Would it be Huguette? I guess so. Barroso, good morning, Frankie. We have another question that's out there. Do we have to wait until May 24th to plant vegetables in my garden? From Ontario. Okay, so May 24th typically is where we have our last frost date. And that's generally, it's not really the truth. It depends. We just had somebody on from Windsor. In Windsor, your last frost date is generally the first or second week of May. Toronto as well, usually the second week of May. As we heard already a little bit further north, including the Ottawa Valley, you're more towards the end of May. So May 24th has been typically that Victoria Day weekend is that big planting weekend overall. A little bit drier today. I wonder what's going on. So it's generally the period of time when we're able to plant most things outdoors. So when it comes to vegetables, tomatoes and peppers, those guys there need a warmer temperature. Even though a tomato and pepper is not a vegetable, they're planted in the vegetable garden. They're fruit. You can earlier on plant things like kale, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, lettuce greens, like any type of lettuce. Those guys there can all take cooler temperatures, and they can be planted even the last week of April. Radishes can be sown earlier on. Spinach can be sown directly in the garden earlier on. Those are all your cool crops. So do you have to wait till May 24th? It really depends on our weather pattern and when we have frost. But some of those cooler crops, like I listed, those guys there are ones that you can plant a little bit earlier on near the end of April, no matter where you are in the province of Ontario. But it's really about that last frost date is really key, and that's really what's going to determine to you. Another little bit of advice is if we wait till our soil temperatures are 20 degrees for squash type plants, like that's your zucchini, even some of your spaghetti squash, pumpkins, things like that. If we wait a little bit later on, you typically get less powdery mildew because they're a warmer plant. Even beans, if you sow your beans a little bit later, they'll germinate quicker because they'll like that warmer soil temperatures that out there. So I hope I answered your question there. I hope I answered it fully well. Crystal's saying thank you. You are welcome out there as well. Marlene, good morning from Mississauga. Fertilize my lawn, looking green and lush. So now if it's looking green and lush, you can get out there as soon as it dries up to cut your lawn. Key about mowing your lawn is we're going to mow our lawn in spring. I tend to like to mow my lawn at least 3 inches. It's a little bit taller than other people like to mow their lawn. The reason why I like to leave it a little bit taller is it's going to shade out weed seeds that are sitting dormant underneath and really prevent them from germinating. And that's really key. If you cut your lawn too short, even though our lawns grow really rapid, you'll give more light down to maybe a germinated seed of a weed, and then that weed will really take on that's out there. But you can cut your lawn. The other key about mowing your lawn is really to make sure that your lawnmower blades are nice and sharp, because if you don't have sharp lawnmower blades, you can do more harm than help. We got a good morning this morning from Ancaster. Good morning to you. Savita saying good morning from Oakville this morning. Paula, good morning to you as well. Karen, we got a good morning to Karen out there this morning. And then we have, I think it's Katie or Kathy. How long after corn gluten pre-emergent applications do you use Promax Green? So your corn gluten, your weed and feed corn gluten pre-emergent will actually fertilize your lawn. So I would wait a 3-week period after, because you don't want to give it a feed and then another feed that's almost too much. So within 3 weeks, it starts after a few rainfalls, it will actually start to really work its way in. So I would wait a 3-week period after, and that would really be beneficial. Marianne, good morning from Bolton out there this morning as well. We got a question from Savita about her hydrangea. I have a grown hydrangea indoor. Can I transfer it outside soon? This leads me to a really good thing about hardening off. So right now, indoor plants that you want to bring outdoors. So let's say that we have overwintering tropical plants like maybe hibiscus, bougainvillea, patio tropicals like oleander, or even this hydrangea, or you have some seedlings. On days when your temperature is above 10 to 15 degrees, you should be putting those plants outdoors for the afternoon or the day in part sun so that we can actually start to harden them off. And we're going to move them indoors after, when we're, especially if it's a warmer night. So let's say the overnight temperature stays at about 6 degrees and above. We can leave it outdoors. And then what we can start to do is to move them into a little bit more light gradually every day. That hardening off is key to make that plant a little bit tougher so that when it is planted outdoors after it's frost free, because that hydrangea has been forced indoors, if it did get a severe frost outdoors, then it would be tough. So here's the other option that you can do on the plant. It'd be tough if it got a frost. You can plant that hydrangea outdoors, but on temperature nights where we see the overnight low dipping below the freezing mark, you're just going to get a pail, put a pail over top of it with a rock on top. That's going to protect it from the frost. And that's another option that you can do as well, Savita, in terms of that plant. So either harden it off, or you can plant it outdoors because it's a hydrangea. It's a macrophylla. It'll do best in part sun. And then on evenings where we're going to have a frost, throw a pail over the top. Here we go. Another question we got. What is the best way to start growing my own garden? So best way to start growing your own garden is to start off small. We really don't want you in the first season to become overwhelmed. Next thing is to really take a look at your space that you have where you want to grow that garden. If you want to grow your own food, you need at least 6 hours of afternoon sunlight. So we got to make sure that between the hours of 11 to when that sun sets, you're going to get 6 hours of direct sun. That's when you're going to have those light units that are going to support the growth of growing your own food. If it's a more shady location, you want to start your own garden, then we got to select the right plant for the right place. So knowing what type of light that you have, if that area faces northeast or east, morning sun, usually a part sun location, then the next thing that we have to do after we figure out light and what we want to grow, then we got to look at the soil and soil quality. If you live in a residential area where it was a new construction, generally you have clay. So building a raised bed is really a good idea. So we want to improve the soil or really build on top of the soil to really have like a good foundation is key for a good top. And then you're going to venture into growing your own garden for the first time, getting some resources, getting some books. If you want to grow your own food, my book, Food to Grow, is a great book. You can get it at your local library. Also, I have Get Growing, which is my seasonal guide to gardening, which will help you. Watching this will help you as well. So those are some great ways to start out. If you want to start out and you don't have a lot of space, and maybe this year you just want to grow in containers, growing in containers is a great way to start out in gardening. When you're growing in containers, you want to use a soil formulated for containers. Miracle Grow has a beautiful organic container soil that you can use if you're growing your own food. You want to also ensure that the pots that you have drainage. Those are key. So there's a lot of tips that are out there that you can have as well. And ask questions. That's the key. We got a good morning from Stainer this morning. We got another question here on what are your thoughts on clover lawn from Karen. So clover lawns have been gaining popularity. And the reason being is that clover generally does well in more shady, high traffic locations. Clover will be nice and green. It's soft to walk on. And generally you're mowing your lawn before that clover goes into flower. And usually you're using a white clover. You usually will mix the clover seed with grass seed and put that in. It's a more natural, sustainable lawn that you'll have. And now that we just had Earth Day, speaking about sustainable lawns is really, really important. That's out there as well. So my thoughts on the clover lawn is that they're fantastic. If you want a nice low maintenance green lawn that's nice and soft to walk on, fantastic. If you're looking for a lawn that has a more aesthetic appeal, and if you're somebody that likes like a traditional looking lawn, then a clover lawn is not for you. If you've had difficulty growing a lawn and you have an area where it's just a difficult area, you may want to try some clover, and that'll be beneficial as well. Okay, I want to give a shout out to something that I learned the other day as well. I want to show you guys a page here as well. This week on Breakfast Television takes me all over the place. But this week it took me to where I'm a graduate of, which is York University. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about sustainability, because yesterday was Earth Day, and to me, Earth Day is just not one day. Every day is Earth Day. So that's why you didn't see me post about Earth Day. I'm going to post on Monday about Earth Day because it's not about just one day of the year. It's every day. But there's a micro lecture series that you can take from York University, and you can see you're going to have to do a little bit of a sign up that's there. But by taking this micro lecture series, you're going to learn a whole bunch of different things and get some badges. And you're also going to learn a little bit about gardening in the micro lecture series as well. And the one thing that I learned just the other day in speaking with Sandra, which is an associate professor who really specializes on wild bees, is that there are actually 400 different species of wild bees in Ontario. And many of those wild bees actually have their homes in the soil in our gardens. And so sometimes when we clean up in the spring, we have to be very careful and critical not to clean up our gardens too early so that the bees actually, we're not disturbing their habitat that's out there. She also taught me that sometimes thick layers of mulch in certain gardens maybe not be the best idea because they can actually inhibit bees from going from the soil into your garden as well. But there's also a benefit to mulch because it does improve your soil. It reduces the amount of weeding and as well maintains moisture. So from a more moisture efficiency. So it's always good to be aware of things that we have out there that really will help us out. Those 400 different wild bee species are pollinators. We often think about the honeybee, but to me, one of the most wonderful and wild bees that are out there is the bumblebee. The bumblebee is this passive bee that does no harm. It's kind of chunky, but it really does a lot of work. And sometimes it's just a beautiful bee that's really misunderstood and will give you no harm. And I often pet the bottom of a bumblebee. So if you see a bumblebee, make sure that you're out there and you're giving it a big shout out as well. We got another question here this morning from Marlene Gregory. I've been trying to turn my soil, have this huge hairy root, no idea what it is. Do you have dandelion clover? Thoughts on it? Maybe one of them when I dig on either the roots are different. What could it be? So dandelion would not have a hairy root system. Dandelion is actually a taproot. So the key is if you're removing dandelion from your lawn and or your garden, you want to remove the entire taproot. If you don't remove the taproot, it's actually going to be a thicker, stronger dandelion. So if you don't remove the root, and that's why weeding after the rain, I got to weed my garden today because after that rain that we had yesterday, this is an ideal time to weed because you'll find the weeds come up a lot easier. Clover doesn't really have a hairy root system, but something that will have an aggressive root system and something that I wanted to speak about too, and it's one of the most difficult weeds to control, is perhaps it could be this guy here, which is of course Creeping Charlie. And this is, Creeping Charlie is a broadleaf perennial weed that does have a flower. It actually has a blue flower. It does have that flower, which will actually help some of the pollinators that are out there. But the key, you can see there's a bumblebee going to some of the Creeping Charlie, foraging on the Creeping Charlie flower. So there is some benefits to pollinators, but if you're trying to get rid of it in your lawn, it can become a real challenge. And the reason why Creeping Charlie can become a real challenge is it does have that crazy root system. It also is a perennial weed. So every time that we go to remove it, sometimes by removing it, we actually stimulate the plant because by every time we're taking a division from that or removing it, we're actually allowing it to go boom and actually spread out. So what we want to do is cut our lawn a little bit higher. We always, anytime we see some of that Creeping Charlie, we want to eliminate top foliage. If we only have a small section, we want to hand remove the Creeping Charlie from that small section. And then what we want to do is edge out that section and we want to sod over so we almost smother the Creeping Charlie. And those are some effective ways. But you really got to determine, Marlene, what the weed is. If you want to send me a picture of the hairy root system that's there, you can send that picture to me. I'm going to show you guys right now my email and also my website as well. We'll just kind of put that there. I'm going to throw this up right there. So that's where you can, so my email address is frankie@frankieflowers.com. So frankie@frankieflowers.com. Anybody have any additional questions or want to send me some pictures, send them to me there. It takes me a couple of days generally to answer those questions. But what I also encourage you to do is to go to frankieflowers.com, which is my website, frankieflowers.com. Go to the bottom, join that newsletter, and that newsletter will give you wonderful advice. There's some giveaways that you'll be seeing on the newsletter as well. And you also have some recommendations that are there. But I would love to see a picture, because a picture is worth 1,000 words and will really help me out in terms of what that issue that you're having in your lawn. Good morning. This morning from Linda. Good morning to you, Linda from East York. Here's the other question. How do we get rid of goat weed? Cynthia, so anytime you go to a local garden center and you see something called bugleweed, goat weed, we got to be very careful. It's amazing that garden centers and many different places that sell plants will still sell goat weed, and even ajuga. Ajuga, even you'll hear me recommend bugleweed underneath the tree, but it needs that really tough edge. How do you get rid of gout weed? Or it's gout weed, not goat weed. It's gout weed. It is also known as snow on the mountain, sometimes referred to. It's got a variegated foliage, if you're wondering. It's something just like Creeping Charlie. We got to continually dig it out, continually eliminate that top foliage. If it's in a contained area, we almost want to edge that area so that we're not going to allow those roots to spread over to other areas. You will eventually win the battle over gout weed, but it does take some time. There are still some non-selective herbicides like Roundup that are available that you can spray on it, but it's a non-selective. So that means whatever it's going to hit, it's going to cause harm or kill. So you want to be careful. You can smother it, just like I've been saying. You can actually put a tarp over it, but really goat weed it's not a quick fix. It's almost continually hand removal over a few years before you get rid of it. So it does take time. That's over there. But really you want to contain it first, contain it so it doesn't spread. So edging that area. Second, you're going to try to dig out and or remove the top foliage. So the whole idea is by removing, we're always trying to starve the roots. A reminder, if a plant doesn't have a leaf, that leaf is what gives it energy and food to the bottom, to the root. So if we starve the roots, we eventually will win the battle and kill out that plant that's out there. We got a good morning this morning from Lori. Good morning to you, Lori. Big shout out to you as well. We got a hi from Campbellford this morning. I put grass seed on Friday. I believe now I put it down too early. Help, please, Diane. So it really depends on temperature. It is a little bit early for grass seed because our grass seed needs a soil temperature of at least 15 degrees Celsius. And this week we have single digit highs. The key is just a little bit of a top dressing of soil on top of it. That way it's not going to blow anywhere. Moisture is really key as well. You'll probably lose some of it. But what I would do is at the end of April, I would also put a little bit more grass seed down. So as soon as the soil temperatures start to warm, we get more consistent daytime temperatures of around 15 degrees. Put some additional grass seed down, because this grass seed here that's there will germinate, but it won't all. But then you're going to put a little bit more down. So you're really just kind of putting a bet on top of a bet. So you're really trying to put insurance on top of it. So that's what I would do for you overall. Another good morning from Brentford this morning. We got Will. Will this morning has a question. Good morning, Frank. Is it too late to use dormant spray on crabapple tree and peach tree in Collingwood? Yes, it's too late. They've already probably cracked their buds, and with that, you're probably already seeing a bloom on them. So the question is, if there's still a firm bud there and you're seeing no leaf stage even emerge, you could still do the dormant spray, but I'm going to guess that they've already cracked their bud. I know it's too early. So you can still use after they finish their flower period. After they're finishing their flowering and the flower drops, we can still at that time use a horticultural oil, and we can still use the lime sulfur separately after they finish their bloom period and the bloom drops. So you can do some treatment there as well. And it'll still be really, you're using more sustainable principles when you're using it at that time. Willie, I have a rabbit problem in my backyard. Many people do. They eat everything I plant. Can you help me out here with what plants I can plant that rabbits won't eat? So I'm going to show you here, and all you can do, rabbit-proof plants. Super easy. You're going to find a bunch of different resources that you can have, and I'm going to throw this up for you. And I'm going to actually write a blog on this as well. You have given me a good idea of a blog thing that I can write there for you as well. So rabbit-resistant garden and landscape plants, I'm going to show you this little listing here to help you out. And I always like to go to some of the university sources to trust them. So this is from Penn State. So you can see just there's a whole bunch of listing of different plants based upon the light that you have. And you can see like for, I will always tell you that if you're looking for a spring flowering bulb, that's going to be easy for you to grow and that's going to be squirrel resistant and rabbit resistant. Nothing like daffodils. You can see that right there at the top of the list that's there. You can see peonies are rabbit resistant, lemon balm. You can have astilbes that are more to the shade. Lily of the valley, be careful. It can spread all over the place. But you can see there's so many different ones that are available. How did I find this list? All I did was I just typed in rabbit resistant plants and I typed in university and the Penn State one came up. And this is a wonderful list to help you out there as well. But dry sun, you got butterfly weed, euphorbia, we got wormwood, we got average to dry sun, we got asters, lavender, penstemon, thyme, yarrow, zinnias. So you do have lots of different plants. The other thing too is if you're wanting to keep some of the existing plants, there's a great product that's called Animal Be Gone that you can use Animal Be Gone, which will help you out as well. You can also plant some of your leafy greens a little bit higher up in the soil. You can actually hear my dog right now barking because the reason why my dog's probably barking is he's probably barking at a squirrel or a rabbit in my backyard right now. My dog, when I let him out, he kind of takes care of the rabbits as well, and he takes care of the squirrels. So that's helpful. And we are, guys, right now at a half an hour. And Bentley right now is probably telling me, hey, let me out, let me out. And because we are at a half an hour, I hope you guys enjoyed all the questions. We have lots that are out there. And I will continue to try to answer some of those questions. But please, if you know some of the answers, hop on there, answer those questions, and help everybody out. Have a wonderful day. Get growing, get blooming, get out there, get dirty. Yeah, that's the thing. Us gardeners, we may be hoes, we may get dirty, but we grow good things. Think about that. Think about that. Okay, guys, have a great one. Stay healthy and health and happiness to all. Every day is Earth Day. Just remember